Have you ever wondered why some men seem to understand women without a single word, while others, no matter how hard they try, are met with silence, confusion, or emotional withdrawal? It isn't mind reading in the mystical sense. It's perception, sharpened through calm observation and mastery over one's own emotional noise. Most men fail to read a woman, not because she hides too much, but because they feel too much. Their desire to be understood, admired, or chosen blinds them to the quiet patterns unfolding before their eyes. The Stoics knew this well. Seneca once wrote that emotion clouds judgment more effectively than any storm, and that clarity comes only when the waters of the mind grow still. The man who learns to still his inner tides begins, at last, to perceive hers. Every woman communicates long before her lips ever move. Her eyes reveal contradiction, a longing to be seen, yet a fear of being fully known. Her posture shifts between invitation and retreat, between curiosity and guarded poise. The tone of her voice fluctuates, like a delicate instrument, tuning itself to the energy she senses in you. When your energy trembles with insecurity, she mirrors it. When it steadies, she feels it, even if she cannot name why. To read her mind, you must first silence your own chaos. A man enslaved by reaction cannot interpret anything beyond his own projections. Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious reservoir of our repressed fears and unmet needs. When you interpret her words through that shadow, you see not her truth, but your distortion. You imagine coldness, where she merely seeks safety. You assume rejection, where she only tests your steadiness. Imagine a conversation where she withdraws mid-sentence, eyes flicking to the ground. Most men rush to fill the silence, over-explaining, apologizing, defending. But the Stoic man waits, not out of pride, but out of precision. He knows silence often reveals more than speech. He observes how her breath shortens when certain topics arise, how laughter sometimes conceals discomfort, how a glance away signals a moment of inner conflict. Each detail becomes a fragment of truth, visible only to the disciplined observer. To understand a woman is to study rhythm, not logic. It is to perceive the emotional cadence beneath her language, the pauses, the hesitations, the sudden softening when she feels safe enough to reveal a genuine thought. Modern psychology calls this attunement, the synchronization of two nervous systems. But the ancients had a simpler term: harmony. The Stoics sought harmony not through control, but through the mastery of perception. You might ask, how does one attain such perception? Through the art of detachment, not coldness, but composure. Detachment is the ability to feel without drowning, to witness emotion without becoming its servant. When you cultivate that calm, her subconscious recognizes it. She will test you, not because she doubts you, but because she yearns to confirm that your peace is real. Every emotional test is an unconscious question. Can you remain unshaken in the storm I bring? And when you do remain still, when your eyes do not flinch, when your tone stays slow and grounded, she begins to reveal herself. The more peaceful your energy, the safer she feels to drop her performance. You become the mirror in which she can finally see her own truth, reflected clearly. Reading a woman's mind is not manipulation. It is empathy refined through discipline. It is learning to listen, not to words, but to the silence between them. When she tells you she's fine, yet her shoulders tighten, the truth lies not in her statement, but in her breath. When she laughs too loudly at something trivial, it may be her defense against vulnerability. To perceive these subtleties, a man must unlearn the impulse to respond and instead witness. The Stoics trained their perception the way warriors trained their bodies. Every reaction was a test, every emotion a teacher. They understood that understanding another begins with mastering the self. For how can you decode the storm in her eyes if your own heart is a tempest? So the next time she withdraws, don't chase. Observe. The next time she tests, don't defend. Study. Her emotions are not random. They are the language of her past, spoken through her present. To read her mind is to read her history, written in invisible ink. And the ink only appears when illuminated by calm light. A woman's mind is a labyrinth, not of deceit, but of design. Each turn, each hesitation is formed from the architecture of her past. To navigate it, a man must understand that her defenses were not built to keep him out, but to keep her memories in. She does not test because she enjoys control. She tests because she remembers the pain of trust, misplaced. Every look, every shift of tone is a negotiation between who she was and who she hopes to be. When she pauses before answering, she's not always choosing her words. She's measuring the space between her desire to open up and her instinct to protect herself. If you rush to fill that space, you erase the silence where truth was about to surface. But if you hold the silence gently, you tell her, I can handle what you're afraid to say. To read her mind is to read her fear. But fear wears disguises, sarcasm, withdrawal, even laughter. Modern psychologists call it defensive humor, but the ancients would have called it armor. The Stoic man sees the armor, but does not attack it. He respects its purpose. He waits until the armor loosens on its own, for no truth is born under pressure. Women live in two worlds, the one they show and the one they feel, and only a man at peace with himself can enter the second without destroying it. Her emotions are tidal. They do not seek logic, they seek containment. When she speaks in waves, she doesn't need you to fix the sea. She needs to know you can stand without drowning. Your calm presence is the vessel that holds her storm. This is why emotional mastery is magnetic. The Stoics called it apatheia. Not apathy, but freedom from the tyranny of reaction. It is the kind of steadiness that makes others feel safe to be real. A man who can sit in silence while a woman spirals through uncertainty radiates a rare kind of power, not dominance, but depth. She feels it. Her subconscious reads it faster than her logic ever could. Consider this. When she argues over something trivial, the issue is rarely the issue. Beneath every small complaint lies a buried emotional need: attention, reassurance, safety. The untrained man defends himself. The Stoic listens to the subtext. He doesn't take offense at her tone because he hears the wound behind it. He does not meet chaos with chaos, but with order. Reading her mind requires you to understand the paradox of emotion, that behind her most passionate outburst often lies her deepest longing for peace. Women often reveal their desires through what frustrates them most. When she accuses you of not listening, it's because she longs to feel understood. When she grows distant, it's often because she feels unseen. The wise man doesn't chase validation, he restores clarity. And clarity begins with neutrality. You must learn to be a mirror, not a wall. A wall blocks emotion. A mirror reflects it without distortion. When she projects her insecurity, do not absorb it. Let it pass through the mirror of your awareness. Observe without judgment. Respond without ego. That's how you access the deeper layers of her truth, the ones she hides even from herself. But make no mistake, this discipline is not gentle. It demands self-mastery sharper than any weapon. You must confront your own craving for validation, your need to win arguments, your addiction to control. Because these are the very impulses that make you blind. A man ruled by emotion cannot perceive emotion, only his reflection of it. To see her clearly, you must become invisible to yourself. No attachment to being right, no hunger to be chosen. Just perception, pure, unclouded, steady. From that stillness, every word she says becomes a clue, every gesture a confession. You begin to see the architecture of her emotion, how her childhood wounds shaped her boundaries, how her past betrayals sculpted her silence. The Stoic does not decode her to manipulate her. He decodes her to understand the human condition, the way pain becomes personality, the way vulnerability hides beneath performance. He reads her not to gain power over her, but to gain mastery over himself. For once, you can perceive the depths of another without losing your own balance. You become truly untouchable. This is not a skill, it's an awakening. Most men look outward when trying to understand a woman, watching her expressions, decoding her tone, analyzing every text message as if truth were a code waiting to be cracked. But true perception begins inward. Before you can read her, you must first read yourself. The unconscious mind acts like tinted glass. Everything you observe in another is filtered through the hue of your own wounds. If you once felt unseen, you'll interpret her distance as rejection. If you once feared abandonment, her silence will feel like punishment. But if you have faced your shadows and dissolved their grip, her moods no longer control you. They become information, not injury. Jung said that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. The same law applies in love. Until you see your projections, you will mistake them for her personality. The Stoic man does not seek to predict emotion. He seeks to perceive reality without distortion. That clarity makes him rare. He listens not to react, but to understand. He observes not to judge, but to witness. And in that stillness, something extraordinary happens. The woman begins to relax. Her nervous system senses safety, and in that safety, her real mind begins to reveal itself. Because every woman longs to be read, not superficially, but spiritually. She doesn't want you to solve her. She wants you to see her, not as a collection of moods, but as a symphony of meanings. The tragedy is that most men hear only the loudest instruments, her anger, her affection, her confusion, and miss the quiet melody beneath. That melody is her truth. When she says, "I don't know what I want," what she often means is, "I don't know if I'm safe wanting it." When she becomes distant, it may not be disinterest, but a test of whether your attention depends on her compliance. The man who reacts with neediness confirms her fear. The one who remains calm rewrites her past. His presence tells her, "You are free to feel everything, and I will not collapse." To read her mind, then, is not to pry into her thoughts. It's to sense the emotional logic behind them. A woman's emotions are rarely random. They are precise reflections of her inner temperature. Like reading weather patterns, a wise man recognizes the difference between a passing cloud and a coming storm. Notice how her words align, or don't, with her body. When she says she's fine but her hands fidget, truth lies in the movement, not the statement. When she avoids eye contact, it isn't always deceit. Sometimes it's the body shielding the soul. You learn to listen with your eyes, to see with your empathy, to translate every micro-expression into meaning. The key is patience. Women do not open to those who demand clarity. They open to those who embody it. The Stoic man's calm is not an act. It's the natural gravity of one who no longer fears misunderstanding. He knows truth reveals itself in time, if given space. And space is everything. It's the silent pause before a reply, the soft gaze that doesn't rush to label, the composure that lets her emotions unfurl without interference. Space is trust made visible. It tells her, you are safe here, even in your chaos. This level of perception changes everything. You begin to see her defenses as messages from her past selves, each reaction a relic of old pain, seeking reassurance. You start hearing what her childhood never heard, acceptance without condition. That's what makes you different. When you reach this understanding, communication stops being verbal and becomes energetic. You feel her shifts before she names them. You can sense when her heart tightens, when her mind drifts, when her words contradict her truth. And instead of confronting, you ground. Instead of reacting, you breathe. You become the calm that reminds her of who she is beneath the noise. It's here that the real magic begins, the unspoken connection that transcends logic. She will think you read her mind, but what you're truly reading is resonance, the field where two minds meet without words, because both have quieted their storms long enough to hear the tide beneath. Every woman carries within her two voices, one that speaks to the world and another that whispers to herself. The first is shaped by expectation, by the roles she learned to play. The second is raw, primal, closer to truth. Most men only ever hear the first voice, because the second does not speak to noise. It speaks only to silence. Silence is where her real mind begins to unfold. Not the kind of silence filled with distance or resentment, but the quiet of emotional safety, a space where she no longer needs to perform. The man who can create that space earns something rarer than love, her transparency. It's not that she trusts you completely, it's that she trusts her reflection in your presence. The Stoics called this the art of indifference, not neglect, but neutrality. It is a sacred detachment that tells her, you do not need to please me for me to see you. This is what disarms her, because beneath every woman's guarded exterior lies the yearning to be seen without judgment. She will resist it at first, unconsciously testing if your calm is real or merely an act. But when it proves consistent, she softens, not because she is conquered, but because she feels safe to be honest. Understanding her mind is not a conquest of intellect, it is an alignment of energies. Her intuition reads yours faster than any word you could say. When your emotions are chaotic, she mirrors that chaos, often without knowing why. But when your essence is grounded, when your eyes carry steadiness instead of hunger, she feels it as peace. That is the invisible conversation that most men miss. You are always communicating, even in silence. Every gesture tells her something. Your impatience signals insecurity. Your stillness signals strength. Your laughter tells her whether your heart is open or guarded. She reads you just as you try to read her, and it is your emotional discipline that determines the outcome. There is a paradox in every woman's psychology. She wants a man who sees her deeply, yet fears being fully known. She wants to feel free, yet longs for emotional gravity. To understand this, one must abandon the need to label her behavior as contradiction. It is not contradiction, it is complexity. A woman's emotions move in spirals, not straight lines. Her anger may contain love, her silence may contain a plea, her distance may conceal devotion. To the untrained eye, this seems unpredictable. To the Stoic observer, it is pattern. Jung wrote that the feminine unconscious carries chaos as its sacred power, and that the masculine's role is not to suppress it, but to hold it. The modern world has forgotten this balance. Men either try to dominate emotion or drown in it. Few learn to stand beside it. Yet this is where mastery lies. To read her mind, stand beside her chaos without flinching. Let her storm reveal its rhythm until it finds its own calm. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a man can do is nothing. Just presence, just breath. She may circle her thoughts, testing to see if you'll interrupt, fix, or retreat. But if you stay, still patient, unbothered, she begins to feel something she cannot name: safety. And that safety allows truth to emerge like dawn through mist. In that moment, her words will slow, her shoulders will drop, her gaze will linger. The energy in the room will change, softer, heavier, real. You'll know you've entered her inner world, not through persuasion, but through resonance. That is what it means to read her mind. It's not psychic ability, it's presence, refined into perception. It's knowing that beneath every defense is fear, and beneath every fear is love. Fragile, guarded, waiting to be met with steadiness. And when you meet it that way, she will reveal everything you once tried to force. Not through confession, but through comfort. Because the truth doesn't need to be extracted, it only needs to be allowed. Most men want to know what a woman thinks. Few realize she wants the same. Beneath her guarded smile, she studies your silence, your reactions, your rhythm. She listens not to your words, but to the energy behind them. The irony is that while you seek to read her, she is already reading you. This is where the true test begins. To understand a woman's mind, your energy must speak a language older than words: composure. She senses in seconds whether your calm is practiced or earned. If it is forced, born of fear or calculation, she feels it as tension. But if it is real, born of inner order, she relaxes into its gravity. Because a woman does not open to curiosity, she opens to containment. Containment is the masculine gift, to create a steady emotional frame within which chaos can move freely without destruction. When you embody that steadiness, her thoughts become transparent. You no longer guess, you feel. You begin to sense where her mind hides behind politeness, where her heart trembles behind sarcasm, where her truth lingers behind a half-smile. This level of attunement demands self-discipline. To see through her, you must first strip away illusion, your fantasies of what she should be, your projections of what you hope she feels. Jung called this the sacred disillusionment, the death of fantasy that precedes the birth of real connection. The Stoic, too, knew this truth, that freedom comes not from possession, but from perception, unclouded by desire. To read her mind is to abandon the need for reassurance. You no longer search her eyes for signs of approval. You observe without craving. You listen without waiting to speak. You allow her to be unpredictable without needing to control her. And in doing so, paradoxically, you gain understanding, because the feminine only reveals itself to what it cannot dominate. Her emotions will rise and fall like tides. She may glow with affection one night and withdraw the next. The untrained man panics, searching for reasons. The wise one stays still. He knows the ocean has moods, and that storms are not signs of betrayal, but expressions of nature. He watches, not as a victim, but as a witness of beauty. And as he remains unmoved, something subtle shifts within her. Her mind, once guarded, begins to trust his silence. She realizes she can unravel without being judged. She starts revealing truths even she didn't know she carried, not through confession, but through energy, through softened tone, slower speech, unguarded laughter. That's when you begin to see her true self, the part untouched by performance, the girl beneath the woman, the softness beneath the strength. Every woman hides it until she senses the man before her is capable of holding it without breaking. That is when you no longer need to read her mind, because she begins to write it into your presence. Understanding her psychology is not about control, it's about depth. The Stoic man does not seek power over her. He seeks harmony with her nature. He becomes the equilibrium in a world of extremes. His steadiness gives shape to her chaos. Her emotion gives life to his reason. Together, they form the union of opposites, the ancient dance of logos and eros, order and passion. In modern terms, this is emotional polarity, the magnetic tension between grounded masculinity and expressive femininity. When you embody this polarity, communication transcends logic. She speaks in metaphor, and you understand in intuition. She hints, and you sense. She retreats, and you hold. But remember, this is not performance. You cannot fake stillness, nor mimic perception. To sustain this level of awareness, you must live it. You must face your own storms until silence no longer frightens you. For silence is where truth lives, hers and yours. A man who reads a woman's mind does not invade it, he tunes to it. He learns to hear the subtle frequencies of emotion that most men drown out with noise. He doesn't ask, "What does she mean?" He feels what she means, and when words fail, his presence becomes her translation. That is the art the ancients understood, that to know another's soul, you must first master your own. To truly read her mind is to stand before the storm of her emotions and see not danger, but design. The chaos is not meant to destroy you, it's meant to reveal you. Every wave that crashes against your calm exposes whether your peace is real or performative. This is how women know who you are, long before you do. A man can only meet a woman's depth to the extent that he has met his own. If he runs from discomfort, he will drown in hers. If he numbs his feelings, he will never feel hers. The Stoics spoke of ataraxia, a serene composure unshaken by external change. Jung described individuation, the journey toward wholeness through integration of the shadow. These are not abstract ideals. They are survival skills for intimacy. A woman's emotions are not linear. They spiral through joy, fear, love, and memory. When you sense this rhythm, you begin to understand that she is not inconsistent. She is cyclical, like the moon. Her moods are tides drawn by invisible forces, the echoes of her past, the remnants of dreams, the hormonal symphony of her body, the shifting tides of her trust. Reading her mind means respecting that cycle, not resisting it. You do not stabilize her by controlling her. You stabilize her by mastering yourself. You do not calm her with logic. You calm her with energy. Words may explain, but presence regulates. Your heartbeat becomes the metronome of safety she unconsciously seeks. When you remain composed, her body remembers peace. When you react, her instincts return to defense. This is why the Stoic lover is magnetic. His restraint isn't suppression, it's direction. His calm doesn't deny emotion, it conducts it. She feels seen, not because he says the right words, but because his stillness gives shape to her chaos. He holds her feelings the way an artist holds color, without fear of being stained. Understand this truth. Women remember how you make them feel far longer than what you say. They track consistency the way the sea remembers the shore. To read her mind is to understand that emotion is her language and consistency is your dialect. When your presence remains the same through affection and anger alike, she learns to trust what cannot be seen, your essence. But beware, the moment you start performing stillness to gain her reaction, the illusion collapses. Authentic calm has no agenda. It doesn't seek to be admired. It simply is. You cannot fake what must be cultivated. To reach that level, you must face your own inner woman, the emotional self you have exiled in the name of strength. Only when you embrace that shadow can you meet hers without fear. The Stoic man is not cold, he is clear. He doesn't distance himself from emotion, he stands within it, unburned. When she rages, he listens. When she retreats, he waits. When she doubts, he remains. His stillness is not weakness. It is strength, refined beyond noise. And from that strength arises an almost supernatural intuition, the ability to sense not only what she feels, but why she feels it. He sees when her anger is actually sadness, when her distance hides shame, when her silence screams for reassurance. He knows the difference between rejection and protection. And because he does not take her storms personally, they begin to lose their violence. In his steadiness, she remembers peace. In this way, reading her mind becomes something greater than skill. It becomes service. You become the mirror in which she rediscovers herself. Through your calm, she sees her chaos differently, not as a flaw, but as a dance. And when a woman feels seen in that way, she no longer hides. She begins to speak from her essence, not her defense. Her eyes soften, her words slow. The energy between you deepens into quiet recognition. You no longer seek to decode her, you simply know. That is when you realize her mind was never hidden. It was only waiting for a man still enough to see it clearly. When a man finally understands how to read her mind, he realizes it was never about deciphering mystery. It was about mastering presence. Because a woman's mind does not open through questions, it opens through energy. She does not reveal herself to a man who seeks to control her emotions, but to one who can contain them. Her mind is not a puzzle to be solved, but a mirror reflecting the quality of your awareness. When you are restless, she grows cautious. When you are certain, she softens. When your silence carries judgment, she withdraws. But when your silence holds space, she speaks, not through words, but through ease. You begin to see the subtle poetry of her psychology. Every shift in tone, every hesitation, every sigh becomes a syllable in a language older than speech. You start to realize that what you're reading is not just her. It's the entire dialogue between masculine and feminine energy that has existed since the beginning of time. She, the tide; you, the shore; she, the movement; you, the form. She tests not to challenge your strength, but to confirm her safety. And when you meet her with steadiness, instead of resistance, she recognizes something sacred. A man who does not need to conquer her, to understand her. This understanding changes the nature of love itself. No longer a battlefield of validation, it becomes a sanctuary of clarity. You stop reacting to her moods and start resonating with them. You stop chasing her words and start listening to her essence. You realize that beneath every question she asks lies a deeper one. Can I trust you to see me? And when the answer is yes, not spoken, but felt. The relationship transforms. Conversation becomes communion. Silence becomes intimacy. You no longer read her for advantage. You read her for truth. But the paradox is this: once you truly learn to read her, you no longer need to. Because she no longer hides. She no longer guards her emotions behind veiled phrases or careful smiles. She begins to live unmasked, not because you forced her to, but because your steadiness made it safe to do so. That is the highest form of love: awareness without possession, connection without dependency, perception without judgment. The Stoics called it eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul through virtue and wisdom. Jung called it union, the sacred balance between the conscious and the unconscious, the masculine and the feminine, the seen and the unseen. And so the man who once tried to read her mind now reads the world differently. He moves through life with quiet authority, not because he controls it, but because he understands it. He has learned that all emotion, hers, his, everyone's, is simply movement seeking understanding. He no longer fears the feminine mind, he honors it. He no longer chases certainty, he becomes it. He no longer asks what she feels, he feels with her. And in that silent understanding lies the power the ancients spoke of, the calm of a man who sees all, controls nothing, and loses nothing. Because what he holds cannot be taken, and what he releases returns to him in peace.